So let's review what we have been doing. So the biomechanics part of this course has been spread over 4 sessions. And we started with session 2 after our intro. And we mainly dealt with the idea of the energy cycle, how passive elements are really important in for storing elastic energy and how we retrieve energy from them. So we covered those in sessions 2 and 3. And this session, we are going to explore how muscles fit into this cycle. It's a bit strange to discuss this in the context of breathing, but I hope by the end of today, you will understand why I choose to do it this way. And in the next session, we are going to understand how one of the things that impedes the energy cycle and how we can work towards improving or removing some of those restrictions. So let's remember that in session 2, we discussed that muscle length is extremely important in the context of energy cycle. And it's a correlate of how much energy is stored in our system. And we explored gait, and we saw automatic fast changes in muscle length happen during walking or transitioning from walking to running. We learned to take advantage of and explore these same ideas in the context of yoga, but on a much slower time scale, right? So that we brought in the idea of deliberation in the previous session. Now in this session, hopefully we'll understand what it means to guide movement using the breath. So let's get started with biomechanics and breathing. So in this session, we are going to review the concept of energy cycle. And there are two parts to this. We'll talk about breathing in the context of musculoskeletal systems in the first part. And in the second part, we'll talk about cardiovascular and nervous systems. So it's poll time. Let's just check what we remember from last time. On average, when are muscles longest during jumping? Is it at the highest point of the jump? Is it at the lowest point of the jump? Is it the moment before taking off from the floor? Is it right the moment when you land on the floor? Great. Let's have a look at what you're saying. I see. So by highest point of the jump, I mean when I'm in the air, right? The moment before taking off from the floor. So we're going to review. Let's look at a video that should jog our memory. So in some sense, at the highest point of the jump is correct because you have no elastic energy, you have no kinetic energy. And in some sense, you have turned kinetic energy into some elastic energy, but you also converted it to potential energy. Now you're higher up. So the total length will be higher at the lowest point of the jump. The mental model, once again, is this idea. So when I throw it on the floor, you saw it got squished, and then it jumped back up. So as it got squished, even though it's getting squished, the total length of the muscles is increasing. And we saw that in the first session, our body behaves in a similar way. So let's review this video that we saw in the first session. It's going to drop on the floor. That's the total length of all the bands. At that point, it has touched the floor and it's collecting energy. So that after it's squished maximally, that's when the length of the muscles is highest. That elastic energy starts getting retrieved. This is the second part of the energy cycle. And then it takes off the floor. So the moment where it takes off the floor is actually the lengths of the muscles are the lowest. The moment it hits the floor is also lowest. In the middle, it increases. So the whole energy cycle takes place in between when you land on the floor and when you jump, when you take off from the floor. right? This isn't exactly how it happens in our body, but it's a very useful model and gets quite close. Okay, let's test our understanding once more. When are muscles longest when practicing asanas in yoga? I see. Looks like we are split in this case. So true, the muscle length depends on the pose, right? Depends on which muscle system. It does depend on the pose. But for a given pose, uh, just based on the information we discussed last time, it is right before exhalation. So during inhale, we expanded, right? And during exhale, we came back. However, I hope to change your mind today. And uh, actually, I don't know why you all picked it's at the end of the active phase, whether it's inhale or exhale. But I hope maybe you're already familiar with what I'm about to say, but let's have a look at it together anyway. So let's recall what we saw last time. Last time, of course, it depends on the pose. As I changed the pose, the length of the muscle system changed. And as I exhale, my stomach's going in, my stomach's coming back out. So I'm inhaling, so it's increasing. I'm exhaling, it's decreasing. I'm inhaling, it's increasing. And then I change the pose again, and then the muscle system length changes, right? So in yoga, breathing is related to both. They say stay in the pose and breathe, and also use the breath to move, right? So we didn't explore the second part last time. We'll talk about it more today. So once again, this is the main mental model I want you to take away. That's why I'm showing you so many times. So in the context of gait, we have automatic fast changes, oscillations in muscle lengths, and we have deliberate slow explorations of energy cycle in the context of yoga. So which check all that are true. The total length across all muscles in the body can be changed by muscular effort. Impact from an external force, it can be during martial arts, someone hits you, or it can be you jumped and landed on the floor, any impact, or breathing. Okay, let's have a look. It's all three. Uh, Most of you have it. It is all three. Okay, so let's take a couple of minutes and explore the mechanics of breathing. For now, I invite you to explore breathing, and I'll give you instructions now. So what we'll do is we're going to pay attention to our breath, and I'm going to gently guide your attention around your body, and your goal is to figure out what is happening in that part of the body. When I guide your attention, if it helps, just place your hand referring to the region that I say. So if I say explore your shoulder, just place your hand on the shoulder. If I say chest, place your hand on the chest. It makes it easier. Or if you're experienced in this, just move your attention around as you breathe. So, and it's up to you whether you close your eyes or not. So I'm going to be looking at you, and that's helpful to me. So I'm going to stop screen sharing because that doesn't matter today. So let's close our eyes or keep your eyes open if you're able to focus with your eyes open, but preference would be to close the eyes and take a deep breath in and breathe out. Just pay attention to how fast or how slow the breathing is happening. Don't try to change it in any way. All you're doing is observing the pace of the breathing. And as you observe the pace, is your attention being grabbed by a specific part of your body, or maybe it's your chest, maybe it's your stomach, just or maybe it's your nostrils, wherever it is, start just pay attention there and hold your attention for a minute. Excellent. If your attention drifts away, that's all right. Just slowly come back to focusing on understanding whether you're breathing at the same pace or are you changing the pace of your breathing. And as you continue to breathe, gently bring your attention to the abdomen or the belly. If it helps, place your hand on your belly and just observe the rhythm of your belly as you keep breathing. When does the belly start going in? When does the belly start going out? Do the muscles under your hand expand when you inhale? Do they expand when you exhale? You don't have to change anything, just notice what's happening. Now gently move your attention to the sides of your abdomen. That would be where the obliques are. And ask yourself, as you inhale, are they expanding? Or as you inhale, is the length of the oblique shrinking? Gently bring your attention to the lower back, above the pelvis, below the rib cage. And ask yourself, as you inhale, are the muscles in your lower back expanding? Or are the muscles in your lower back shrinking as you inhale? There is no need to change anything. You're just observing what's already happening. Now gently bring your attention to the chest, the sternum area, and ask yourself, is that region expanding as you inhale? Now gently move your attention to the area between the chest and the shoulders. The muscles around there expanding. Gently bring your attention to the shoulders. Are your shoulders lifting as you inhale? Are they going down as you inhale? And now bring your attention to the area under your armpits. Are the muscles there, the serratus anterior and so on, are they expanding as you breathe in, or are they contracting as you breathe in? You're simply observing. Gently bring your attention to the upper back. Is the area between your shoulder blades coming close together as you inhale, or are the shoulder blades moving apart as you inhale? Finally, bring your attention to the neck region. Are the neck muscles tensing up as you inhale, or are they loosening up as you inhale? Gently bring your attention back to the presentation. Usually, guiding your attention, people end up finding it relaxing. So I hope you found it relaxing as well. Now, let me ask you what you observed. So you made observations in multiple parts of your body. So the purpose of this, one way these observations can be used after you uh, do this sequentially in different regions is you build a 3D model, a mental model of what happens. Okay, let's see what you're all saying. So it is very common for different people to observe different things. Um, one set of observations is particularly interesting in terms of how we think about our body. And that being, if there was no contraction anywhere, if every single part expanded, it is hard to imagine how that would happen. Normally, we think of muscles as if my elbow flexes, my tricep increases in length. If my elbow increases in length, my tricep shortens in length. We think in terms of trade-offs. We don't usually think in terms of increasing everything, making the pie larger. So let's take a look at how, if and how this can be achieved. So uh, the theory behind it is that what we have been working with so far only takes into account passive forces. When you inhale, you exert muscular effort through active forces. The main muscle in question is the diaphragm. It's a dome-shaped muscle. We'll deal with it more in a few minutes. And it contracts downwards, and then you can use that to store more elastic energy. It's a little bit like, if we go back to this toy model, it's a little bit like me pulling this apart, and you see that the total length of muscles increased everywhere, right? Except if you imagine whatever's doing this action is the diaphragm, that one muscle contracted and everything else expanded. So in addition to taking in air, many muscles lengthen, just like you observed, thus storing muscular effort as elastic energy. So ideally, there is expansion in all directions, including lower back, upper back, side to side, top to bottom. So how do the bones move in space to enable this to happen? So I found a video online which does a better job of explaining this than I could possibly do today. So I'm going to share that video with you.
The breathing cycle involves taking air into the lungs, that's inspiration, and breathing it out, expiration. This involves changes in the volume of the thoracic cavity, and that happens by changing its dimensions, vertically, anteroposteriorly, and to some extent transversely. How does this happen? The ribs and the sternum move. The ribs are hinged at the back and they angle downwards to attach to the sternum. So they can move to change the diameters from front to back and sideways. But what about vertically? That's the diaphragm. That is the muscle of respiration. It sort of takes on the entire load itself. Inspiration is active. Muscles actually actively have to contract for it to happen. Expiration is passive. The lungs have elastic properties, so it results in recoil when it stretches. So, in quiet expiration, the muscles used during inspiration just relax. So let's start with the diaphragm. Most of the work of inspiration is done by the diaphragm alone. When it contracts, it flattens, so the vertical dimension will increase. The lungs expand and air enters the lungs. During expiration, the opposite happens. The diaphragm relaxes, the thoracic volume reduces, the lungs contract, and air gets out. The rib cage can move up or down. And since they're attached to the sternum, when the ribs move up, the sternum moves forward. That increases the diameter from front to back. When the ribs come down, the sternum will fall back and the diameter reduces. So ribs move up and sternum moves forward in inspiration. The ribs come down, the sternum falls back in expiration. The upper ribs move with the pump handle movement. So it moves the sternum up and down and increases the anteroposterior diameter. The lower ribs have a bucket handle movement. That increases the transverse diameter.
So the main things to take away are up-down length, up-down volume, I guess, is regulated by the diaphragm mainly, and to some extent also through the collarbones. So you can use the collarbones as levers on the sternum, which also does the pump handle motion that they talk about, right? And the sternum moves forward, and then the bottom ribs, I don't know if you can see. So you see the bottom ribs. So they end up, so they're sloping down, and they end up doing the bucket handle motion this way to open up from side to side. So if the bones happen to move this way as the diaphragm contracts, you will store a lot of elastic energy in many tissues across your body. In yoga, and when they say breathe into a specific region, as my best interpretation I have is you breathe such that you're distributing elastic energy throughout your body. You're causing an increase, however small, everywhere. So the ribs don't move in isolation. The spine also moves. We'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. So here is an example of this person doing a breathing exercise, which clearly demonstrates expansion across multiple muscle systems during the inhale.
9 breaths. Take a nice deep breath in and start.
By no means am I suggesting that we should breathe like that every day or every breath we take. All this is demonstrating is it is possible to manipulate the diaphragm and your body in a way where you can achieve expansion in all dimensions. So let's take a concept check. Right now we saw that muscular effort exerted by the diaphragm during inhale is stored as elastic energy in different places, in different people as we observed, but it is possible to store it in across all dimensions. So I agree with false, but now I'm going to ask you. Give me an example. When is muscular effort not stored as elastic energy? So in running, it is to some extent stored as elastic energy, but I think somebody is on the right ballpark with clenching your jaw. Whenever you think about tensing up, there are opposing muscle groups fighting with each other, right? So if you hold out your hand and really tense really hard, even though you don't have to do that to keep your hands there, that's when you have muscular effort fighting muscular effort, and then it doesn't get stored as elastic energy. Okay. So if there is one thing you take away from this course, it is this. Muscular effort can be, but is not necessarily converted into elastic energy. This brings us into the idea of improvement. How do we store more? How do we retrieve more? How do we train our motor patterns to do specific things? All of this ties into this idea. So let's do a concept check again. Let's check our current understanding and see how we can advance. Muscular effort can be converted into elastic energy only during inhale, only during exhale, during both inhale and exhale, during inhale, exhale, and when holding the breath. There's only one correct answer. Okay, let's see what you're all saying. I see. So I think it is during inhale, exhale, and when holding the breath. And I'm going to show you some examples. So the first useful mental model is, again, using our toy, is to show you that manipulating things in the opposite directions can both lead to storing elastic energy. So in the first 4 seconds of this video, I'm going to simulate the inhale and relax. In the second half, I'm going to simulate exhalation, where I'm going to bring the rigid elements together. So I just continued the motion from here. I kept going in, and at some point, they started lengthening again. Right? So if we keep exhale, 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 and if we put a muscular effort into exhaling, we can store that as elastic energy. In fact, in normal breathing, we just go inhale and then relax. Right? So elastic energy just gets dissipated. We don't really use much of it. So here is an example of normal breathing. I guess the formal word is eupnea for normal breathing. The up bump in the red line shows that muscle is active. So in this case, that's the diaphragm. There's an active inhale and a passive exhale. Abdomen is not doing anything. Now, you could imagine an active expiration. In martial arts, when they throw a punch with an exhalation, they go, huh. So that is active exhalation, right? Or when you're panting, you are using muscular effort to pump more oxygen. So the exhale can be continued to stretch the diaphragm and store energy. So there's the inhale, and there's exhale. Even though things are coming back together, the muscle lengths are increasing. So free divers use this idea to improve lung capacity. Right? They do these exercises where they deliberately keep going with how much air they can exhale out, and that requires effort. So this person, I've seen videos of him without oxygen, right? So he's free diving, and he's in there for 10 or 12 minutes. And to me, that's amazing. So here is an exercise they do in yoga to explore elastic energy storage when continuing the exhale. So in this case, first I'll show you what it looks like. So the exhale is active and the inhale is passive. This person is using their abdominal muscles to do the exhale, to push air out of their system. And the recoil from that elastic energy is used to get air back in. So this is the counter example, right? So the exhale is active and the inhale is passive. So I try to repeat this with markers. So what I'm showing you is the length of my spine. It's a proxy for the length of my back muscles. So as I'm breathing, as I'm doing the active exhale, so I do the exhale right over there, and then I'm increasing the elastic energy in my back muscles. So there is a rhythm, there is a clear oscillation. Now, remember, what I also want to show you is that just because my stomach is moving, it doesn't mean I'm with the rhythm. So here, I'll show you an example of when I have the rhythm, when I lose it in the middle, and when I get it back. I didn't do this deliberately. Now I lose it, even though you see my stomach moving. Now I kind of get it back and lose it. And towards the end, I sort of get it back. So this is what it means to feel the rhythm and go with the rhythm. It is very hard to tell just because your stomach is moving. You think of it as uh, throwing a basketball up and down, right? So you inject specific energy at specific times into the system. So you can, at least when I first tried to do it, you can do it in a way where you can't even maintain the basketball. It just falls onto the floor, right? So that's when you're not with the rhythm. So in this case, the abdominal muscle is the equivalent of the hand. The basketball is everything in my internal organs. And the floor is the diaphragm. So I think that's a good mental model in this case. So there are other ways of manipulating elastic energy. Here, I'm holding my breath, and I'm moving my diaphragm up and down. So I can change the total amount of elastic energy without the exchange of air between outside and my lungs. Right? So that's the point here. And it is not just that you can move the diaphragm up and down. There are more involved manipulations which play with distributing energy in different ways. So here's one example. It's called a Nali Kriya in yoga. I attempted it and somehow was able to do it. So you turn the diaphragm like a wave, right? So it's a circular muscle, and you sort of wave it around. So as you can see, if you watch the video closely, I did 3 rotations on one side and 3 rotations on another side. And as you can see from here, remember, I'm monitoring my back. On my back, you can clearly see that the first 3 rotations are not very good. And the last 3 rotations, I get nicer and more equal oscillations. I'll play the video once more. So this is why it takes so long to refine these ideas when people pursue these paths, right? When you're doing yoga or whatever it is. So diaphragm is the key muscle in breathing. It can be used to manipulate elastic energy distribution across muscle systems. And in other words, we explored many ways of manipulating the diaphragm in the context of breathing exercises used in yoga. So we updated our mental model. into to incorporate how muscular effort fits into the idea of energy cycle. The idea is once you store muscular effort as elastic energy, you have more control over it. You have more options. This is the idea of freedom, whether it's in breathing, yoga, dancing, martial arts, wherever it is. So I gave you a mental model of dribbling a basketball, right? You're exciting the system at specific times. So timing and force, they matter a lot. So in at least the way I was taught, this was presented to me as the idea of pre-stretching in the context of dance, right? So before you move, you prepare by stretching the right regions, and then you use those to create a movement. So the pre-stretching is basically converting muscular effort into elastic energy or storing elastic energy in the correct places. And then you retrieve them into different patterns. This is normally how I used to think about it, meaning I mainly have this mental model of lifting a weight through my bicep and doing a bicep curl, right? So chemical energy, calories are directly getting converted into kinetic energy. While this is fine, but there are changes normally if you observe changes throughout the body, there are a lot of things happen in the context, which is why even in weightlifting, form is really important. So what does form translate to? At least in biomechanics speak, it translates to what is known as anticipatory postural adjustments. If you want to experience it yourself, all you have to do is stand up and lift your arms. And if you pay close attention, even before your arms start lifting, there are changes that happen in your legs and in your core, right? So those are called anticipatory postural adjustments. They're largely thought to be involuntary, but one idea is that if you're pursuing some movement discipline, you learn to understand how these work and you learn to manipulate and work with them. So the main takeaway here is that muscular effort can be, but is not always converted into elastic energy. And when it is during normal breathing, especially during inhale, this happens, and we can leverage this idea to optimize both breathing and movement. So in practices like yoga, we explore how muscular effort from breathing can be guided into different movements, right? So they say, with the inhale, do something, or with the exhale, do something. So the idea is that with active muscular effort, you first store the elastic energy, and you use those patterns to guide your movement in a specific direction. So meaning there are two things happening in your body, breathing and movement. Synchronize the two things, right? So that's the idea. So hopefully this course will give you a fresh perspective on the statement. Breathing is what causes the movement of energy. Energy, as far as I can tell, refers to elastic energy. Many different people say different things, uh, but that's the most parsimonious explanation I can find. Uh, we didn't talk about correlation versus causation. What does it really mean to be causing a movement rather than just doing two different things that happen at the same time? But we got a glimpse of it when I did the active exhalation exercise. When I lost the rhythm, I was doing two things. When I had the rhythm, to some extent, I was causing, right? So that is session one. In the next session, so that is part one, I have a little bit more, and I do think I have time. So we'll talk about one class of restrictions in the body which impede the flow of elastic energy, and how we can use all the equipment that we introduced in the very first session to detect, understand, and get some hints about how we can move past these restrictions. So I will pause to take questions. There will be a question and answer session in the end, but if you have burning questions, put them here now, because I want to take 5 to 10 minutes to talk about breathing in the context of the cardiovascular and the nervous systems. Or if you feel like I should just move on and keep questions to the end, that's also fine. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the last two questions. I don't know what last two questions you're referring to. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention to the Q&A board as we were going along. Yes, please unmute and talk. Oh, hang on, I cannot hear you. I think it's a problem on my side. Let me do something real quick.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I was just thinking, if I'm thinking correctly, and pardon me because it's my son who's the MIT student, so
That's
I
okay.
hope I don't sound less than you all. But I'm a licensed therapist, and I was thinking about applying what you were saying to my practice and how we tell people with anxiety who shake and have, what you might call destabilizing movements, that they should stand in superhero pose for about 30 seconds. And I was thinking, gosh, is this really about storing the elastic energy so that they can better control some of the tics, that I see so often? And I just wanted you to tell me if I was all wet before I applied what I'm learning here. Thanks.
So I will show you a compelling demonstration of exactly what you said next week. So this has to do with restrictions and its relation to elastic energy. And I will show you in a context that everybody can relate to, in the context of typing on a keyboard with recordings of the muscles. So is it okay if I hold off until next week? Okay. The short answer is yes, but the long answer is coming next week. Let's see. Did I make the study about hypopressive already? I don't know what that means. Please unmute yourself and ask the question, if that was you.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm physical therapist and I'm studying for the moment the low pressure fitness, which is a kind of breathing with hypopressive in the abdomen and combined with different movements. So it's like yoga, but with a spatial breathing.
Okay.
And I would like to know if the lab has already make a study about this subject, and if not, if you are open to make some things about it.
Oh, yes. So we have not done a study about this, and we would love to follow up and explore together after the course. If you're in, we would love to do that.
Okay, so I will write you maybe an email.
Yes, that sounds
okay, good.
So we have another question. Is diaphragmatic breathing the same? During diaphragmatic breathing, is the same muscle system being used, or just bringing mental focus to them? So, right, so this brings the hairy subject of relating terminology to experience. So when we use, there is not one single way of explaining a specific thing, and the same thing can be explained in many different ways. So it is, so let me try to back up. So when we say diaphragmatic breathing, we are deliberately trying to bring attention to the diaphragm so that we do not just use our chest muscles. There are auxiliary breathing muscles, your pectoralis, many muscles in your back can be used to expand the chest, right? So when we get stressed and get anxious, we end up making the breathing very shallow and just using those, right? Working those, and we don't want that. So just imagine panting. It's not, the idea is not, is to just go back and focus on the inside muscles get a good rhythm going. That's. I hope I answered your question. If not, please unmute yourself and ask me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about heart rate. This is part 2. I'll try to be quick. I know there's only 5 minutes. Okay, so there are yoga. In most cases, we think about movement and posture, but as it was written down many thousands of years ago, it's only one of 8 different aspects of yoga. So in this course so far, we explored the connection between movement and breath, but there is also a very tight connection between breathing and somehow with meditation. So to give you an idea of what that is, um, I happened upon this. Somebody told me to explore the heart rate, and I happened to come across this. So what I'm going to show you, hopefully, if this works. Can you see a squiggly line on your screen? Okay. So let me see. So I have been recording my heart rate since the beginning of the session, half an hour before, and this is live. So let's see if I can control it. So as you can see, there's a lot of ups and downs, wiggles, and so on, right? So it's not exactly the same. So the interbeat interval constantly keeps changing. However, we can get control over it. So let me, just to prove that this is my heart rate, I'm going to jump up and down. Oh, I lost connection. Wonderful. Okay, we are back. Okay. So as I jump up and down, it goes up, not by much, but because I'm not overexerting myself. I'm going to try to bring it back down. I was going to do a short meditation thing, but because I'm running out of time, I'll just show you results. So that is my heart rate. It goes up and down. But in the beginning, I tried to, I can make it move up and down in a very rhythmic fashion if I breathe at a specific frequency, right? So this is common knowledge, not something we've discovered or anything. Let me show you some stuff. Okay, so here's an example of my heart rate. As I was just living my life, and then I just opened an app and started breathing. Oops. Okay. So you can see that there is some sort of rhythmicity or an oscillation that I can get going within my heart rate when I start breathing in a specific way. Why does this happen? People have done many experiments, and the reason for this is the so-called baroreflex, which has to do with pressure sensing receptors in your blood vessels. So if you have seen those movies where they do a chokehold or they hold the neck and somebody faints, they're using this. So what happens is there are pressure sensitive receptors in your neck, and when somebody presses them, if they get it right, then please don't try this at home, then your nervous system will falsely think that your blood pressure is super high, and it starts slowing down the heart, and it can keep going, and then somebody is going to faint, and then they're going to faint. Right? So that's the basic idea of a baroreflex. However, when people analyzed breathing, and they saw many different patterns, right? So they analyzed the frequency spectrum, so to speak, of breathing. And what's happening when we breathe slowly during meditation is that we are operating at the preferred frequency of the baroreflex, of the blood pressure regulation system. There are also stories of monks, I haven't been able to achieve this, who can breathe very slowly and regulate their body temperature, right? So the low frequency peak that you see here in breathing is thought to be because of thermoregulation. Now, naturally, I was curious, and I wanted to know if I could create this resonance effect at different frequencies. So sure enough, just like how you can excite the systems in different ways, you can do the same thing, and there happened to be a pattern across this, right? So I found specific frequencies as I breathe, or when I'm not doing anything, or even during, I just wore this to sleep. I also see this during my sleep. And when I plot the heart rate and the period at which the resonance happens, there is a relationship to my current heart rate. So if my current heart rate is low, then the frequency is different. Then I resonate at a different frequency, and so on. Right? But what you can also do is you can resonate at multiples of it. So I can breathe twice as slow or 4 times as slow, and uh, engage or coordinate with a different system. And this was surprising and interesting. And that's where I'll leave it at. And during meditation, this might be one of the reasons, right? So when you're breathing, you're resonating with different systems in your body. Each system in your body has a different preferred frequency. For example, your digestive system, the frequency at which you see it's called the electrogastrogram, right? It's 1 in 20 seconds. The baroreflex is 1 in 10 seconds. So the idea is maybe you can tie in with the different systems in your body when breathing at different frequencies. Okay, so in the context of movement and meditation, in the context of movement, I want you to think of the energy cycle and how you excite different things, how you put energy into the energy cycle. In the context of meditation, I want you to think about the concept of synchronization. So I apologize for going 3 minutes over. Thank you so much for coming. I will take questions now. Yes, I see a question. Wim Hof can control his body temperature through breathing, and he did a lot. Yes, I have looked at his breathing techniques, and I tried to replicate them, measuring my heart rate. His idea is that he's somehow activating the immune system. I have no clue or evidence from my own personal monitoring things as to how that could happen. So I wouldn't know how, if I were to conduct the next study on Wim Hof breathing, I wouldn't know how to do it or how to think about it. His breathing technique is closely related to one of the exercises I showed you called Kapalbhati. I just hyperventilated when I tried it for a long time. So I don't have many comments on this. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Okay. So I'm going to stay back if you have any questions. Oh, thank you. I will send the video so you can look at all of these things again and review any parts that you found interesting. So I will officially end the session, but please feel free to unmute yourself, talk to me, or post more questions. You're very welcome. I'm having a great time interacting with you, and thank you for participating. Hope to see you all next week.